A goat herder in the mountains of Ethiopia once watched his goats behave in a way that made no sense. They ran, jumped, and stayed awake all night. He feared they had eaten something deadly. Instead, they had discovered the drink that would change the world. Coffee would fuel empires, survive bans, and become one of the most traded commodities on Earth. And it all started with a single wild berry. Today, we're uncovering the incredible true origin of coffee, from ancient Ethiopia to the cup sitting on your table. Stay until the end to discover why some rulers once tried to ban coffee completely. Picture the 9th century, long before anyone on Earth had tasted coffee. Dawn breaks slowly over the highlands of Kaffa, in what is now southwestern Ethiopia. Thick fog clings to the hillsides. A farmer wakes before sunrise, exhausted, the way most farmers wake in a world with no stimulant stronger than tea or wine. He rubs his eyes and stretches his aching back before another long day in the fields. Long workdays stretch ahead of him, and fatigue is simply accepted as part of being human. Monks in distant monasteries struggle to stay awake through hours of nighttime prayer. Soldiers march for days on empty stomachs and heavy eyelids. Travelers cross deserts under a punishing sun with nothing to sharpen a tired mind. There is no coffee shop on any street corner, because there are no coffee shops anywhere on Earth. There is no morning ritual to jolt the body awake. Alertness is a matter of willpower, discipline, or desperation. In these highlands, wild shrubs grow untouched, their branches heavy with small red cherries. Local animals occasionally nibble at the fruit, but no human has connected these berries to anything useful. Trade routes crisscross the region, carrying salt, gold, ivory, and cloth between kingdoms. Caravans of camels move slowly through dust and heat, laden with goods bound for distant markets. Yet this plant, growing wild in the shadow of ancient trade paths, remains a secret the world has not yet uncovered. Nobody suspects that these unremarkable red berries hold the key to global commerce. Nobody imagines wars will one day be fought over trade rights to this plant. Nobody dreams that entire cities will one day organize themselves around the ritual of drinking it. Physicians of the era rely on herbs, prayer, and rest to treat exhaustion. Kings send messengers on foot across vast distances, their bodies pushed to complete collapse. Scholars copy manuscripts by candlelight, fighting sleep late into the night. Sailors navigate open water for weeks, surviving on hard bread and sheer stubbornness. In distant Europe, wine and beer remain the drinks of daily life, often safer to consume than untreated water. Nobody yet understands the concept of a stimulant you could brew each morning. For now, it is simply forest, quiet, wild, and waiting. Somewhere in these hills, a shift is about to happen that will ripple across centuries. It begins, of all places, with a herd of restless goats. Legend places our central figure in the Kaffa region of Ethiopia, sometime around the 9th century. His name was Kaldi, a young goat herder responsible for a small flock in the misty hills. Each day followed the same rhythm. Kaldi led his goats out at dawn and returned home only after sunset. It was ordinary work, repetitive and unremarkable, the kind of routine that fills most lives in history without ever being recorded. But one afternoon, everything changed. Kaldi noticed his goats behaving strangely near a cluster of wild shrubs. They were leaping, bleating loudly, bounding across the hillside with an energy he had never seen in them before. Confused, he watched closely to figure out what had caused this sudden burst of wildness. He traced their excitement back to a shrub covered in glossy green leaves and small red cherries. The goats were eating the fruit eagerly, returning again and again for more. Curious and perhaps a little nervous, Kaldi picked a few berries himself. He turned one over in his palm, studying its deep red skin. He tasted the fruit's sweet outer layer. Then, according to legend, he chewed the seeds inside. The taste was bitter, unlike anything he had eaten before. Within a short time, he felt a wave of unfamiliar energy move through his body. His tiredness disappeared. His senses sharpened. His heart beat a little faster than before. He stood taller, suddenly alert to every sound around him. He began to understand exactly what his goats had discovered. Excited by his find, Kaldi gathered a handful of the cherries and rushed toward a nearby monastery. He wanted to share the strange fruit with the monks who lived there. But the monks were skeptical, even suspicious, of this wild plant a goat herder had brought to their door. One monk, according to the legend, tossed the berries into a fire, dismissing them as a distraction from prayer. As the berries roasted, something unexpected happened. A rich, unfamiliar aroma began to fill the room. The monks paused, drawn in by the smell drifting from the fire. Intrigued rather than repelled, they raked the roasted beans from the embers and dissolved them in hot water, hoping to preserve whatever had created that scent. They tasted the resulting drink cautiously. To their surprise, the same alertness Kaldi had felt washed over them. One by one, the monks looked at each other in quiet disbelief. Suddenly, their long nights of prayer felt less exhausting. They began brewing the drink regularly before evening devotions, sharing it among themselves in small clay cups. Word of the discovery spread through the monastery, then beyond its walls, carried by monks and travelers along regional trade paths. Merchants passing through the highlands heard whispers of a berry that could banish exhaustion. Pilgrims carried small pouches of dried cherries back to their home villages. Within a generation, the story of Kaldi's goats had become local legend, retold at firesides across the region. Here is the surprising twist most people never learn. The story of Kaldi may not be historical fact at all. Historians widely regard it as a folk legend, first written down centuries after coffee was already being consumed in Yemen and across the Arabian Peninsula. The earliest verified evidence of coffee drinking as we know it points not to Ethiopia, but to Sufi monasteries in 15th century Yemen. There, monks brewed coffee to stay awake during long nights of devotion, much like the legend describes. From the port city of Mocha, the drink began its true journey into recorded history. Whether Kaldi truly existed or not, one fact remains certain. Somewhere in these highlands, humans first connected a wild, energizing berry to the idea of a deliberate, brewed drink. That single connection would eventually reshape economies, religions, and daily life across the entire world. By the early 1400s, coffee cultivation had firmly taken root in Yemen, particularly around the city of Mocha. Sufi mystics used the drink to maintain focus during nighttime rituals, treating it almost as a spiritual tool. From Mocha, coffee spread rapidly along trade routes into Mecca, Cairo, and Damascus. By 1511, the drink had become so popular in Mecca that religious authorities grew alarmed. Conservative leaders banned coffee that year, fearing it encouraged rebellious gatherings and loose behavior in coffee houses. The ban did not last. Officials raided coffee houses and confiscated barrels of roasted beans. Merchants hid their stock in cellars, waiting for the storm to pass. Public demand proved far stronger than religious decree, and the prohibition was overturned within years. Coffee houses, known as kaveh khaneh, began appearing across the Ottoman Empire by the mid-1500s. These weren't just places to drink coffee. They became centers for music, conversation, chess, and political debate. Some rulers found these gathering spaces threatening. In the 1600s, Ottoman Sultan Murad IV reportedly made drinking coffee a crime punishable by death, fearing coffee houses bred political dissent. Soldiers patrolled the streets of Istanbul, searching for hidden coffee houses operating in secret. Some drinkers were caught and executed as a warning to others. Yet even a death sentence could not kill the growing obsession. By the 1600s, European traders had encountered coffee through contact with the Ottoman Empire, and curiosity quickly spread across the continent. Venice welcomed its first coffee house in 1645, introducing the drink to Western Europe. Some Catholic clergy pushed to have coffee banned, branding it a dangerous Muslim invention. According to popular legend, Pope Clement VIII decided to taste it before making a judgment. He reportedly found it so enjoyable that he blessed it instead of banning it, clearing coffee's path into Christian Europe. England's first coffee house opened in Oxford in 1650, followed quickly by London locations that became known as penny universities. A single coin bought a cup of coffee and hours of stimulating conversation. Merchants, poets, and scientists gathered under low wooden beams to argue ideas late into the evening. Some historians credit these smoky rooms with helping spark the scientific revolution taking shape across Europe. Meanwhile, the Dutch broke Arabia's tight grip on coffee cultivation. In 1616, Dutch traders smuggled coffee plants out of Yemen, defying strict export laws designed to protect the region's monopoly. By 1699, the Dutch had successfully established coffee plantations in Java, marking the beginning of large-scale coffee production outside Arabia. The King of France soon wanted his own supply, and in 1714 the mayor of Amsterdam gifted him a single coffee plant as a diplomatic gesture. That one plant was housed in the Royal Botanical Garden in Paris, guarded like a treasure. A young naval officer named Gabriel de Clue later smuggled a cutting from that very plant aboard a ship bound for the Caribbean. Legend says he shared his own drinking water with the seedling during a brutal Atlantic crossing, refusing to let it die of thirst. From there, coffee cultivation spread explosively across the globe. The French began growing coffee in the Caribbean by the 1720s, aided by a single seedling smuggled to Martinique. Brazil followed soon after, and by the 1800s, it had become the world's dominant coffee producer, a position it still holds today. Vast plantations stretched across newly cleared hillsides in the Brazilian countryside. What started as a wild shrub in the Ethiopian highlands had become a global agricultural empire, shaping colonial economies and enslaving millions of laborers across plantations in the process. By the late 1800s, coffee had settled into daily life on nearly every continent, brewed in kitchens, sold on street corners, and traded on newly formed commodity exchanges in New York and London. The drink that once fueled quiet monastery prayers now powered empires, revolutions, and entire national economies. Today, coffee is the second most traded commodity on Earth, surpassed only by crude oil. More than 2 billion cups are consumed worldwide every single day. Picture a line of those cups stretching around the equator several times over, and you still wouldn't reach the true number. Over 70 countries now grow coffee commercially, supporting the livelihoods of more than 125 million people across the supply chain. Small farms in Ethiopia, Colombia, and Vietnam still hand-pick cherries much like farmers did centuries ago. Massive roasting facilities in the United States and Europe process those same beans by the ton, filling warehouses with the rich smell of fresh roasted coffee every single day of the year. In the United States alone, roughly 66% of adults drink coffee every day, making it more popular than tap water as a daily beverage choice. Coffee houses still function much like they did centuries ago in the Ottoman Empire. They remain places where people gather to talk, work, debate, and build community. Modern coffee shops have simply replaced chessboards with laptops and mobile phones. Major companies have built entire empires around this single plant. Starbucks alone operates more than 38,000 locations across the globe, a scale that would have seemed impossible to those first Yemeni traders. Somewhere right now, a barista is calling out a name over the hiss of a steam wand. Somewhere else, an office worker is pouring their third cup before noon. Coffee has also shaped scientific research, with studies linking moderate consumption to reduced risks of certain diseases, sharper focus, and improved reaction times. Researchers in white coats now study the same plant a goat herder once stumbled upon by accident. Coffee farming also supports fragile economies in developing nations, where a single harvest can determine a family's entire yearly income. Fair trade movements have emerged in recent decades, aiming to ensure farmers receive a fair price for the beans that fuel a multi-billion-dollar industry. Coffee culture has also shaped language itself, giving us phrases like coffee break and wake up and smell the coffee, expressions now used far beyond the beverage itself. Cafes have hosted chess matches, poetry readings, business deals, first dates, and quiet moments of solitude for centuries, connecting strangers across continents through the same simple ritual. Entire industries now exist solely to grow, roast, package, brew, and deliver this one crop to your kitchen table. Every single morning, without thinking twice, millions of people repeat a ritual that traces directly back to a goat herder's strange discovery in Ethiopia. Coffee shops still buzz with the same restless energy that once filled Ottoman courtyards centuries ago. The next time steam rises from your cup, remember that you're holding more than a beverage. You're holding centuries of trade routes, religious debates, smuggling operations, and empires built on a single wild berry. Here is the twist that makes this story unforgettable. The very thing once banned and blessed by a pope now sits quietly on your kitchen counter. An entire global economy grew from a handful of goats who couldn't stop dancing on a quiet hillside centuries ago. So here's a question worth sitting with. If coffee had never been discovered, what might have taken its place? Let us know your theory below. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more untold origins, forgotten history, and remarkable true stories from the past. Because the biggest revolutions in human history sometimes begin with the smallest, strangest discoveries imaginable.